प्रेषितां वाचमिमां वदन्ति चक्षुश्रोत्रं कौ देवो युनक्ति श्रोत्रस्य श्रोत्रं मनसो मनो यद्वाचोह वाचगुंस प्राणस्य प्राणः चक्षुषश्चक्षुरतिमुच्य धीरा प्रेत्यास्माल्लोकादमृता भवन्ति.
So just a reminder that we started with the question from the disciple. And we discussed it at length last week. And essentially what the student wants to know is, what is that transcendental reality? See, the student, by the question itself, we understand that the student has done his homework, her homework. They are well-versed. They know everything in the world, essentially, and the limitations, actually. They understand the limitations of the world. They've understood that anything that the world provides is fleeting, is not permanent, cannot give them that ultimate satisfaction. That they've understood. Yet they are still to reach that state, that turiya, that fourth state. So they approach the Guru just for that last bit, just to understand, just to get to that Brahman, to God. What spirit indeed directs the eye and ear? What is that transcendental reality? The master speaks, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat. That which indeed is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the Prāṇa Vital-air of the Prāṇa, and the eye of the eye. The wise, having completely freed and risen above this world, become immortal. So, as mentioned, the disciple is very eager, very keen. Remember, he's trekked through the jungles, risked limb and life in order to find the master. And now he wants to know, what is that supports this entire terrestrial experience that I'm having? What lies beyond what I can perceive? What is that which enlivens my actions, my mind, my intellect? The first thing you'll have to appreciate is that the master in this context, in fact, this is indicative of the entire Upanishad. The master never strays from that fundamental principle of education to proceed from the known to the unknown. Now, if I ask any of you, remember, we are dealing with the highest philosophy, the highest philosophical thought known to mankind. You pick up a philosophy, any philosophy book, it can be so confusing. These guys have a knack of confusing you. Use convoluted words that nobody uses. Even dictionary, you got to scrounge to find out what words they're even using. Very difficult to understand. Here, the Upanishadic masters stick to that fundamental principle of education. Knowledge proceeds from the known to the unknown. Again, if I ask any of you, is there any words in there that you're unfamiliar with? We'll say no. understand all the words in there. Having progressed through a series of, or through a course of study. This is a course of study. Most people would have gone through many books to reach this point. So when I say prana, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Immortal. Exactly. Everything in there you know. The ear of the ear. See, this is the problem. When you approach a people to try and understand what God is, they're very eloquent in their description of God. Very eloquent. Using all words which we can't understand. No, God is that infinite love, infinite mercy. The human intellect cannot conceptualize infinite. Okay, you may argue, everyone knows what infinite is, but yeah, you know about this idea of infinity, but your intellect is limited. It cannot appreciate infinite, believe it or not. So there they are using all these words, the infinite love, infinite mercy. It has no meaning. It's as good as putting a word there that you're completely unfamiliar with. This does not help us unveil what that transcendental reality is. So what happened is people just accept these terms. Oh yes, God is infinite love. Oh yes, God, infinite mercy, yes. What's so difficult in understanding that? It's the same people that just have accepted that word God. See, what happened was since the beginning of time, as you all know, a human being is endowed with this subtle intellect. The subtle intellect is that which enables one to posit the existence of something beyond this terrestrial experience, beyond this world, as it were. So the probe of the subtle intellect starts asking the questions. What is that which lies beyond this world? Is there something beyond all of this? One clever chap, or a bunch of clever chaps, said, of course there is. What is it? What is it? That's God. And the people were satisfied. Who created this universe? It was God. What supports the entire substratum? What is that substratum that supports the entire pluralistic phenomenon? Easy. It's God. And they were satisfied. Now, no inquirer of truth will be merely satisfied with that proposition. It's a proposition. See, Dave just put a word there, God. You could put any word there. Origin. Who created the world? Origin. Who created the world? Zob. Any word you could put there. And, that's it. That's it. Exactly what the so-called religious stewards are doing today. They're just putting words that have no meaning, in essence. What do you think? You say, Craig, God has no meaning, no essence? I can tell you. You see, ask any one of you, what is God? Everyone got a clear idea, very clear idea what God is. This is the problem. Everyone is 100% sure what God is. No, I'm not talking about your opinion on what you think God is. But you genuinely ask anybody, man in the street, favorite subject, just ask me what God is. Sometimes I do it just for my own entertainment. I don't tell anyone, but just to entertain myself. You know, sometimes you got to be at these social events. You need some entertainment. Sitting around, people are drinking, talking rubbish. What is your idea of God? You know, they associate me, for better or for worse, as some spiritual person. So the question is not out of context. I can have a bit of fun with it every now and again. Yeah, what is God? Elaborate detail they go into. Elaborate. Only one person you shouldn't ask what God is. Oh, well, you can. You're free to do whatever you want. One mistake I made once. I asked a pastor, a preacher. I could not escape that guy. Honestly, I couldn't escape him. He cornered me. And going on and on and on and on. Anyway, the point is that everybody is sure. Everybody knows exactly what God is. And this is the problem, as we're going to discover as we progress through. You cannot know God. You can't. It's impossible. No? But Craig, then what are we doing here? I thought this Kenopanis is going to give us the answer to what God is. That's why I've come here. I want to understand. And now you're saying, don't even bother. You can't understand God. Okay, good. Nobody left. So, any description of God is not God. That any of us can appreciate. Now, this is if I was a realized master, I'd probably get so frustrated. Imagine you've understood the entire cosmos. You've come to that realization, God realization. And now you have your Zoom room full of disciples there, and now you got to try and communicate this God to them through the limitation of speech. I would get very frustrated. These guys these are Upanishadic masters, a very different level, highest level. Because they're exactly that same position. They've reached that fourth state of consciousness, that turiya, the God realization. They've reached there. And they've experienced it. You see, just as the dreamer wakes up to the experience of the waking world, the dreamer can never know the waker. While you are in the dream, you cannot know the waker. If you say, no, I do know the waker, that means you are the waker. You've become the waker. Maybe half groggy or kind of navigating through that half sleepy state, but you are awake now. You have become the waker. So they have become that God consciousness. So they're experiencing that Godhood. And now, through the limitation of language, are attempting to explain that to us. Plus, they've got to work within the principle of education moving from known to unknown. And this is why this Upanishad is amazing, amazing. It is the year of the year. It is the eye of the eye, the speech of the speech, the prana of the prana, the mind of the mind. All words we are very familiar with. Now, what you have to appreciate is that within that, there are 2 ears. One is a small ear, and one is big ear. You were making sense, Craig, up until now, and now you're talking about big ears and small ears. I've got one big ear and one small ear. I don't know what you're talking about. Big ear means capital E, ear. Small ear means ear. So what is it that we know in that equation? See, we know the ear, right? We all got ears. Some of us have got big ears. Some are medium. Some stick out. Some are small. Yeah, we have. Yeah, we know. Ear is there. So we know the second ear. What we don't know is the big ear, the first ear. That big ear, that first ear, indicates the consciousness. See, and this is how we have to approach it. You are all listening, and I assume hearing. With what do you hear? You can ask anybody this question. Even a 3 or 4-year-old. With what do you hear? And it's a pretty straightforward question. It's a pretty simple question. Oh, that is easy. I hear with my ear. They even rhyme. They made it easy for us. I hear with my ear. What is the ear? And the person points to it. In Sanskrit, it's called golya. This fleshy outcropping. It's the ear. Is that what you hear with? See, scientifically, they've proved that, some people have had a misfortune. They've lost accident or whatever, burnt. Some people have had their ears burnt off. This is terrible, but it's true. Yet, the interesting thing is, they can still hear. Ear is gone. They can still hear. So it's not the golya, it's not this fleshy outcrop with which you hear. Something inside there is what you're hearing with. Those of you who know any anatomy will appreciate that within this ear, in the ear canal, is a tympanic membrane. So when the sound waves hit that tympanic membrane, causes it to vibrate. That vibration sends waves down nerves, signals, as it were. So you hear with the tympanum. No, because some people have damaged the tympanum, but can still hear. And many devices now, I don't know, some of you may have seen them. They're actually not even on the ear. They're in the back of the head here. And it's essentially what it's doing is helping translate those sounds into pulses. So the nerve signals. Anyway, keep on going. Tympanum goes down the anatomical neuroanatomy, should I say, is not what it used to be. So I don't know the exact phrase, but it goes down the nerves, into the brain. Anyway, we know that one hears only when that stimulus hits the corresponding sense center in the mind. Then we hear. Don't stop there. Go back. Trace it back. Further and further. Even when you hear, when it's hit the sense center in the mind, you say, I am conscious of that sound. See, we've talked about this before. Someone may be calling you, maybe calling your name, or speaking to you, and yet you don't hear them. Why? Because your mind is preoccupied with another vocation. You're engaged in or involved in something else. It could be watching a movie, reading a book. So you don't hear it. Your mind's not available. When your mind is available to hear that sound, it hits the sense center within the mind and you say, yes, I'm conscious of that sound. Dinner is ready. Someone's calling for dinner. Right. What is that makes you conscious of the sound? That is the big ear. The ear of the ear. That is the consciousness. And all sense transactions converge to the same point. That consciousness, that pure consciousness, that enlivening principle that enables not only for one to hear, to see, to feel, to think. It is that enlivening principle, the pure consciousness within each and every person. That is what he refers to as the ear. Now it's the same. I'm not going to go into every one of them, but it's the same principle applies to the mind of the mind. You may say, where's the intellect here? In this context, when he says mind of the mind, he's referring to intellect as well. Speech of the speech. See, it doesn't go through all the organs of action. Other 4 organs of action are there. You must understand, these are very terse, pithy statements, to the point. I don't have time to sit there and list out all the organs of action, all the organs of perception. They just give one, in this case, 2. Ear of the ear, eye of the eye. 2 are given. Very rare, in fact. Usually it's just 1. Speech of the speech, representing all the organs of action. Prāṇa, the vital air. Mind represents mind and intellect. So you can apply the same principle to all the organs of perception, organs of action, prānas, physiological functions, mind, intellect, the whole lot. All of these at the very base at the very base of all of these is that pure consciousness. See, without that pure consciousness, without that enlivening principle, the equipment, these matter equipments, are inert, insentient per se. You buy a light bulb, right, in a store. These many different light bulbs. You can get different colors and voltages and anything. But one thing is common with all light bulbs you buy in the store or in the shop. What is that? What's the common factor?
They all require electricity.
Yes, yes. That's one way of looking at it. A light bulb in a shop. You're all looking at me as though some highly philosophical answer I'm looking for. All the light bulbs in the shop, what do they have in common? You say, all require electricity, correct. But the ones, all light bulbs require electricity. What are specifically the ones in the shop have in common?
Greg, they all got a price on them.
All got a price. No, some don't.
Price in the shop.
Do they have a form?
Do they have?
A form, that little thing that ignites the light. What you call that?
Filament.
The filament, yeah, correct.
No, up. Yes, Jolene is closest on the mark here. See, you have to follow. See, all the answers are independently right, but you need to follow the conversation. That's why I ask questions periodically to check if you're following. And no one is quite following. I have to go back now. As I said, these matter equipments, these matter vestures, these organs of perception and action, the mind, the intellect, everything, the whole bang shoot, are inert, insentient per se, without that enlivening principle. Then I went on to talk about light bulbs, right? What the light bulbs in the shop all have in common. Yes, they all require electricity, but the common thing is none of them are glowing. Have you ever gone to the shop and seen a glowing light bulb sitting on the shelf? They're insentient, inert. There's no light in them, right? This is the point. So the same, of course, you take it home, you screw it in or plug it in, and you turn on the switch, and that electricity flows through that bulb and produces light, right? So electricity plus bulb is light. Consciousness plus matter, spirit plus these vestures is life, as we know it, this experience that we are going through. So the matter vestures per se have no life in them without that consciousness, without that enlivening principle. Back to the question. By whom willed and directed does the mind alight on objects? Endowed by whom does the primeval Prāṇa Vital-air function? By whom will does speech originate? What spirit indeed directs the eye and the ear? That which indeed is the ear of the ear. The wise, having completely freed and risen above this world, become immortal. See, in our ignorance and innocence, our focus and interest of attention has slipped. Now, when I say that, what's happened is each one of us in this waking state of consciousness are ignorant of our true nature, that divine core. Ignorant. You may say, no. You've spoken so eloquently on divine core, that enlivening. We know exactly what it is, Craig. Nobody knows. We're ignorant. We're all in ignorance, right? We've lapsed into that because we're putting our focus of attention in the wrong place. Where is all our attention and effort placed? On this world. How to get a better job, how to get more money, how to have a nice place to stay, how to have a nice car to drive, where to go next on holiday, have a nice family, have this, maybe I'll be known, maybe I'll get some followers, what can I do to improve my situation? This is our focus of attention. Trying to get ahead in the world. Trying to get either more comfortable, more recognized, more wealthier, whatever the case. So our focus of attention is slipped. It is misdirected. Misdirected in the sense that our focus, effort, and attention is on the world. As I said in the beginning of the class, everything within this world is impermanent. It's fleeting. It's transient. It doesn't last. Constantly changing. And invariably, that change you have no control over. Yet still you carry on. We're all carrying on. Now, these wise saints, these sages, these realized masters have understood the limitations, have understood that this world is nothing but a changing phenomenon, and have understood, well, best to get to that which is unchanging. Because if I get to the unchanging aspect of this changing phenomenon, then surely I can immerse myself in a lasting, permanent state of whatever that is. At least it's permanent. So their focus of attention was driven towards finding that changeless reality. It's difficult for us to appreciate. For the simple reason is because we still get that kick from the world. I don't know why it is, but you get a kick and you go back. And we're just getting kicked and kicked and kicked, yet we keep going back. Amazing. That's why they say deep ignorance we're in. So the wise understand that there is a limitation in pursuing the world and change their focus of attention. Now, it's one thing to say change your focus of attention and shift it onto the self, but as we've realized, now we're just putting the word self there. Earlier, we're just putting the word God there. We're even putting consciousness there now. It's the same thing. It has no meaning. Ultimately, we need to get off this passing phenomenon that we call the world and get back to that changeless reality. How do we do that? Following a spiritual discipline to eliminate those vasenas and desires that cloud and cover that immaculate reality. See, it's very difficult to envisage the self if it's something that cannot be envisaged, to conceive of the self if it's something that cannot be conceived. Where do you start? And this is where they talk about this process. And it's a process. Of course, elimination of desires, but negating all that is world, asserting the reality. This process of negation and assertion. Neti neti. Remember, in the beginning, the student goes to the guru. Tattvamasi. And he contemplates, and comes back. Is it this? Neti, not that. In other words, it's another lesson. You're giving him bonus lessons here. We don't recognize it, but bonus, neti, not that. He's saying negate all of that which you think it is. What's left is what it is. Fascinating. If you're able to push aside whatever it's not, what's left is it. Something that you got to go out and find because it's already within you. That reality you are, right? We've convinced ourselves somehow or the other that we're not. So we've got to get rid of that erroneous idea that we are this limited personality. Once we strip away the layers of those, I can use the word here, ego, because it's the ego that projects this false reality. Once we strip away the layers of the ego, what remains is the truth. As we remove the falsities of this limited personality, what remains at the core is the pure consciousness. So it's a case of shifting our attention away from the material equipment through the process of these spiritual disciplines, karma, bhakti, jnana, towards the realization of our true self. From that which we perceive to that which makes me perceive. From that, what I hear, to that which makes me hear. In fact, a practical tip. There's one way of navigating it. It's not, listen, this is not going to make you spiritual. It's not a spiritual discipline, as it were, but it's useful. It's a reminder. Remember, there's many reminders that we can inspire ourselves with, the better. I find this extremely useful, especially when you're in conversation with someone you don't want to listen to, or there's irritating sound, or even something that you don't particularly like to see that you're exposed to. It's not what you see that matters. It's not what you hear that matters, but that which makes me see, that which makes me hear. This should be sounding very familiar to all of you. What is this going on? Any ideas?
The consciousness in learning that hand to move.
Chapter 4. It's yajna going on. Remember yajna? Anybody? Remember the yajnas? What are yajnas? What are you talking, Craig? One chapter back we did yajnas, right? Does anyone remember? No one. It's a simple yajna going on. The same thing they're saying. That's why that yajnas is such a special topic. It's a very philosophical topic. Anyway, yajna going on, constantly shifting that focus of attention. Yajnas is designed for spiritual evolution. The same approach we're adopting in this idea. Shifting our attention from what we see to that which makes me see. See, you may be even, I'm not saying you only use it in a negative context, but even in a positive context. You may be sitting there viewing a beautiful summer sunset. And really, they are quite spectacular this time of year. And you may get lost and involved in that. Look at the colors. This is, wow, amazing. And you get your camera out and you're taking photographs of something that doesn't exist to show your friends that which doesn't exist of something that doesn't exist. There's no meaning to it. Anyway, and you're posting it and everyone's seeing it or something that doesn't actually exist. That's not the point. The point is that you can see that sunset, appreciate it, Nothing wrong with that. But it's not what I see. Is that which makes me see. See, again, try and reduce it to just a simple intellectual concept. What we're attempting to do again is soften, reduce, lessen the importance of those external factors. Otherwise, you get too caught up, too involved in it. See, even the sunset, something beautiful, maybe Himalayas, or it may be snowing. Something beautiful, something inspiring by nature. That is most dangerous, because that we easily get lost in. Bad things are easy not to get lost in that. Who wants to get lost in something terrible? You see walking on the path, and some dog has been there before with irresponsible owners. You're not going to get lost in that sight, you know. But easy to get lost in the sight of something beautiful. Even then he says, that which makes me see. See, it's a case of removing that external factors, reducing the importance we place on them. No doubt. I'm not saying ignore the beauty of nature. Of course, we can't go through life ignoring nature's beauty. But even in that space, even in that place, have that ability to swing that focus of attention. That's what he's talking about. So in order to gain spiritual edification, we will need to negate all of this, everything here. Not this, not this, not this. Negate the world. If you negate the world, what is left is the self. Of course, this is easier said than done. It's a practice. It requires your effort. It requires your attention. The problem is it's so much easier to let the focus of our attention drift outwards. It doesn't require any effort. That doesn't require any effort, because the senses are naturally flowing that way. They're going that way anyway. It doesn't require any effort. What requires that effort is to not get involved. So all these explanations, just to establish that firm conviction within you. See, even you look at the changes taking place in the world, as we said. The world is constantly changing. Even you look at your body, it's changing. You apply for the visa, I had to apply for a visa, and it's been, I think, 3 years since I needed to apply for a visa. The photo 3 years ago, look at the photo, wow, a handsome young man. Take a look in the mirror. Oh goodness, is that what 3 years of passage of time does? Oh goodness. There's changes taking place. All right. You see, the interesting thing, again, it's just to make you think. The interesting thing is that through all these changes, constantly changing, to recognize the changes taking place implies a change of substrata. See, simply put, in order to recognize any change, you need one changeless factor. You're flying in the aircraft, right? and you look out the window and you see just sky. There's no clouds, there's no sun. It's just blue sky. There's no fixed point for you to observe. Okay, of course you're in an aeroplane, it implies you're not tumbling down to earth, which implies movement. But for that split second, think about it. You look out the window, it's just blue sky. Nothing to compare your movement to. There's no stationary object. It could almost be that you're not moving, right? I don't know if any of you have had that experience. It's almost as though you're not moving. If that doesn't resonate with you, imagine two trains on tracks and they're going exactly the same speed. Exactly the same speed. It almost appears as though you could be stopped at the train station. So to observe change, you need a fixed point, something that doesn't change, right? So there's a pole and you're in a train and the pole doesn't move, but you're moving. We're moving. You can observe that change. Philosophically, the same thing is happening. Think about it. You're noticing all these changes occurring, even within yourself. Your body is changing. The environment is changing. Your mind is changing. The intellect hopefully is changing for the better. Implies what? Changeless factor. What is that changeless substratum? Shift your focus there. Again, indicators and indicators, pointers and pointers, to help you get that conviction that there is something to pursue. Right, everyone okay? Chintan.
The first verse, the student is saying, by whom? And then the second verse says, starts with that. And so it almost seems like the student thinks it's that this force is it's well possibly personified, but the master is probably trying not to point out that it is being personified, but still then proceeds to use the organs to try and portray, which I kind of get what is that force that is really driving everything that the student is trying to ask, and because it is something that he's trying to say that it's known to the student. It's just a comment, or or maybe something that you can clarify, that if the student is asking by whom and the master says that, is that it of any importance or significance?
See, you can see the difference. Okay, we can argue that the student himself or herself is not quite at the level of the master. Of course, that's why he's gone to the master for advice. So the student puts it in the sense, and quite rightly picked up, by whom, implying a personification. Not really. I don't think that the student sincerely believes that it is someone. But again, in the limitation of language itself, you see, that's why it's, as I mentioned, these masters and the student himself has got to a point, right, where language is almost insufficient in a way to deal with these subtle concepts. That's usually why, the subtler and subtler the concepts get, we start using mathematics, and that it's all symbols. Equations and theorems are all written in symbols because language breaks down. Anyway, this is a conversation between the two, which requires language. And we start seeing the limitations even in the languages of, number one, the student, to try and express his question. And the best he can do is to put that forward as, who's doing this? Somebody, something, whom? So limitation in language, and obviously a limitation in the understanding of the student. Then the master speaks and he goes, that. See, it's very, very interesting use of the word that. Because it's in fact is encouraging the student in a way. He's giving him that sense of autonomy. It's a basic human need for autonomy. He doesn't say, no, you're wrong. It's not by anybody or anything. He doesn't do that. He goes, that. Saying, that, by whom? You're asking by whom? That. So he doesn't deny it. He doesn't point out his fault. He gives him that sense of autonomy, which is essential for 1-2 progress. So that's another way of looking at it. That. Whatever you think, I'm not denying that. Let's go with whatever you think. That, what you think, is this. That is the ear of the ear. So he's again taking the student from his belief, what he knows, what he's come to understand, and ushering him from that point again through to a more detailed, elaborate, in-depth, subtle understanding. Very cleverly done. Okay.
Yeah, very smart.
Okay. So before we go on, just for your reference, there's a diagram in the textbook. I don't know if you guys have got open your textbook there. It says the year of the year, and there's 2 columns. On one side, the capital ear is, and he lists it: Supreme Self, the pure consciousness, Atman, Brahman, changeless, imperishable, transcendental. These are all indications of that big ear. Then on the other side, he's got the small ear, corresponding material equipments. Not corresponding, but it's the other side. And the idea is to shift from right to left. So it's just a summary. It's a useful summary. So I would encourage you all to just make reference to that table. Okay.
न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाग्गच्छति नो मनो न विद्मो न विजानीमो यथैतदनुशिष्यात्.
The eye cannot reach that, nor speech, nor mind, indeed. We know it not. We do not know how to impart it. Again, these are the cryptic statements of the Upanishads. You may say, why are they so cryptic? No, we know it not. He just told us what it is now. It's put deliberately in that way. Deliberately to make the student think. You see, what you have to remember is where is the Upanishadic student and where are all of us? It's completely different levels. So he knows the caliber of the student, and he's putting it in such a way to make him think. Essentially what he's saying, the guru is saying here, is that this Brahman, this reality, that, capital T, is not an object of experience. The eye cannot reach it. It's not an object of perception. It's not an object of emotion. We cannot feel God. Nor can we conceptualize or conceive God. So it's not an object of experience, but rather the subject in you which is experiencing. See, if we go back to this changeless and changing phenomenon, you're constantly referring to my body, my mind, my intellect, right? You're doing it all the time. We're all doing it, directly or indirectly. My body. Interesting thing about that is when you say my body, it establishes a possessor and a possessed. Interesting. So the body becomes a possession. Who possesses the body? That's the question. It is the subject that is experiencing, not an object of experience. So he's just reaffirming that again. The reality, Brahman, the truth, is beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, beyond actions, beyond perceptions, beyond feelings, beyond thoughts. But rather that which animates, that which enlivens actions, perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. No equipment can reach God per se. You may say, well, how else do we get there? That's all we have. Directly. No equipment can contact God directly, or even indirectly. What do they call it? Checkmate. Checkmate. So where to from here? Again, it comes back to the same point. What are we doing here? The only way you can understand this is that, yes, we've got these equipments and we got to get somewhere. And all we got to use is these tools. This is beautifully conveyed in the pole vault example. So you'll appreciate that a pole vaulter is attempting to cross a bar that's high, very high. You can't, it's not high jump, you can't just jump over. It needs to use a pole. So the statement, no pole vaulter can cross the bar without a pole. That we can appreciate. You need the pole to get you up to cross the bar. But it's equally true that no pole vaulter can cross the bar with the pole. Everyone agree? You can't cross the bar without a pole, but you cannot cross the bar with a pole. What are you talking about? Similarly, you cannot reach the reality without the equipments, yet you cannot reach the reality with the equipment. This is what he's talking about here. It's unattainable through the equipments. You cannot perceive, feel, think, conceptualize God. Impossible. Thus, the Guru admits that he does not know Brahman. In the sense, it is not something perceivable, feelable, or comprehensible. It doesn't pertain to any of the equipment that are object of perception, emotional thought. But rather a subjective apprehension, not an objective comprehension. You apprehend that reality. You become that reality. So again, the Guru here reinforces, reestablishes that point. No, he's not saying here that he's, don't misinterpret it. He's not saying that he hasn't got there. We know it not. He's not saying that he's not enlightened. He's an enlightened master. That is established. We know it not means it's not known through the equipments. You can't use the equipments to know it. It's not knowable, as it were. He's merely saying that the subjective experience cannot be imparted objectively. We don't know how to impart it. Again, this is the limitation of these great masters. They've transcended to another state of consciousness. And they're trying to communicate that state to a lower state. Imagine you have a sleepover. We're all probably a bit old for that, but you can trace back however many years. You have a sleepover with all your friends, right? And imagine you're all having a dream. You're all falling asleep and you're all in the same dream together. Just imagine. You need to apply your imagination here. And in that dream, you're being chased. You got a gang of your friends and you're being chased by a bigger gang. And you're being chased. And suddenly you wake up. All your friends are still asleep. Now you are in the waking state. Your friends are all still stuck in that terrible, terrible dream. Now, how do you communicate to them that they don't need to worry? Actually, they're all just here, in this, nothing here in this room. Very safe, secure, no one chasing them. How do you communicate that to your friends who are sleeping? This is the same problem that they're faced with. We do not know how to impart it. The enlightened person cannot describe the state of God realization. It's impossible. As I said, words falter. Even symbols wouldn't do it justice. So it's not that they haven't experienced that state of enlightenment. Of course they have. They've woken up to that fourth state. It's just that impossible to convey. We're limited. Even our receptacle to receive that is limited. So, how do we receive? You see, even within this limitation of conveying that transcendental experience that they've attained, outstanding job that they've done. And as we go along, you'll see, somehow they've managed to at least give us some glimpse as to what it could be. Of course, all the time reminding us, this is not what it is. We'll see as we get into the 5th, 6th, 7th 8th verse. He keeps on repeating. It's very interesting. The Upanishads never repeat. He keeps on repeating. Not what you worship here. Not what you worship here. Not what you worship here. But that's for next time. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time, patience, perseverance.